Ashraf has become an international bulwark, an icon, a beacon against Islamic fundamentalism and the terror regime emanating from its roots in Tehran. The irony is that the more the regime tries to pressure Ashraf residents, the more Ashraf, this beacon of hope for millions in Iran, is today a shrine. This is why the Iranian regime cannot and will not tolerate a peaceful settlement of the crisis. As soon as a memorandum of understanding was signed between United Nations and the country of Iraq last Christmas, the Iranian regime that was caught off guard started to interfere and is doing everything they possibly can to turn the MOU into a failure. It is unfortunate that the United Nations and the United Nations High Commission for Refugees are falling into this trap. Under instructions from Iran, Iraq has turned Camp Liberty into a prison. That is what it is. It's a prison without any rights which we all hold dear. In a normal prison, inmates would have the right to see their lawyers or their family. They would have access to medical treatment. But in the so-called Liberty Camp, what an irony, the Muslims have perverted the meaning of every word in humanity as we know it today. In the so-called Liberty Camp, these fundamental rights, they are just not guaranteed. How can then, Mr. Kobler, the United Nations representative, seek peaceful resolution to this saga? How can he approve the relocation of the United Nations recognised asylum seekers, then threaten the residents that if they don't take their inhumane conditions voluntarily, they should be prepared to face the savage consequences, since we cannot stop the Iraqi Prime Minister from sending troops to kill you all? Again, we are finding the mullah's culture here, perverting the means of the word voluntary. If this is the definition of voluntary, Mr. Kobler, then please can you define forcible relocation for us?
So let's see how the situation is in Iraq. Iranian resistance attained a document from inside the Islamic Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC, and it says, following the transfer of the first group of Ashraf residents to Camp Liberty, the Iraqi Prime Minister has reassured the Quds Force and the regime's ambassador in Baghdad that members of the PMI will be crippled in liberty and will become politically dead. In this document, it is also revealed that we, that's the Iraqi government, have told the United Nations and the international community that the Iraqi government does not recognise members of the PMI as political or humanitarian refugees.
It is so important that the situation is exposed, denounced, and support for people in Ashraf and for democracy in Iran is publicised. Since the announcement of the closure of Ashraf and the removal of the residents, we have done what we can in raising our concerns through letters and articles in the press. We have seen the photos of Liberty over there. You can see very directly what it's like. It's a misnomer, a prison camp. It can't be called Liberty. As Lord Clark says, it's a concentration camp. High walls, surveillance, the presence of security Iraqi armed forces in the camp means that it cannot offer protection in any way. We need to know, an investigation needs to discover, it needs to expose what kind of decision-making took place to create this abomination.
By special request, I had asked that General Dave Phillips go first and I follow, because I knew everything he said I would agree with, and I do. I had the same experiences, and until a month ago, Dave and I didn't know each other. We knew of each other, and we respected each other's reputation, but we came up independently with the same conclusions, and we had the same experiences. So where is the common denominator? The common denominator is in truth. That is why Dave and I are here now, because of our bond with our allies and our friends and our brothers and sisters at Ashraf, and because we see truth being violated for the sake of appeasing the Iranian government. When State Department bureaucrats could not figure out what to do, the 2003 ceasefire agreement was thrown out, protected person status revoked, and the PMOI turned over to a pro-Iranian Maliki government.
We have gathered here once again today to address the alarming humanitarian situation in Camp Ashraf. Today, I want to raise the issue of broken promises. The broken promise of the Iraqi government to treat residents humanely. Yet they were attacked by the same forces who were supposed to protect them. Critically ill people, injured patients of Ashraf are also prevented from seeking medical care and attention. That is in addition to the inhumane pressure, the cruel siege and the psychological torture and isolation that people are experiencing within the camp. I'll talk also about the neglected responsibility by the international community and the UN to prevent the secure protection of Ashraf residents in accordance with the law adopted by the UN in 2006 under the Responsibility to Protection Act. The neglected responsibility of the US to hold the Iraqi government to account for 3 years of repeated and deliberate abuse of human rights to the residents of Camp Ashraf. Again, I look at the neglected responsibility by the UN to hold account to the Iraqi government for 2 bloody attacks against the camp, which resulted in the death of 47 defenseless, innocent residents. Your resistance is a symbol of the struggle and freedom of the democracy that we so sadly want in Camp Ashraf. And rest assured that even though we have lost a great supporter of our cause in the last few days, we will continue to support the brave residents of Ashraf. Every one of those brave and courageous people we will continue to support along every step of the way on their journey towards freedom and democracy in Iran.
Also, over the last few years, the Archbishop of Canterbury has spoken out and done much in aid of the situation at Camp Ashraf, and I can assure you that the situation and the people involved remains very much at the forefront of his thoughts. I've heard so much about the more acute danger with the planned forced removal of the residents to the grotesquely, inappropriately named Camp Liberty.
The residents have now taken the first step and moved to Camp Liberty, conditions of which are totally contrary to the assertion that the new camp meets the humanitarian standards that UNHCR applies for refugees situation around the whole world. Since this is most basic rights and freedoms and dashed away, and so we face with 2 new definitions of moving people voluntarily and humanitarian standard, which is our once such condition in the prisons.
The fight goes on. The effort will be redoubled. That I pledge, as did Sarah Chandler before me, on behalf of my profession. This is a time to exert every sinew, and that's what we shall do.
Now, Liberty, we are told, has been certified fit for purpose. But by whom? According to what international standards? In the light of what best practice? And it's very, very difficult to find out. We have seen some of the reports, the technical report attesting to fitness for purpose, but it's written in language which itself is highly equivocal. Yes, there are generators. They were working on the day we were there, but we're not sure they're going to work tomorrow. To me, that suggests a certain measure of serious reservation on the part of the inspectors with regard to the viability even of that one element of the camp, so-called Liberty. The evidence, the facts on the ground, the photographs, the narratives, of course, tell another story. And I think it's worth underlining that this is actually not a UNHCR camp. It doesn't comply, as far as I can see, to any extent with what UNHCR considers to be the essential requirements for a refugee camp or a transit centre or anything. In the face of that intransigence, in the face of that often, it seems, willful disregard of the facts, it is essential, as was mentioned earlier this afternoon, that we see put in place a group of competent and experienced investigators, that they should be enabled to look closely at the actions of the Iraqi government, that they should be able to review the intelligence which has come out and which has also been referred to today, the intelligence relating to Iraq-Iran relations and the policy on Ashraf.
You and I know the reason why we've gathered here today. It's because Camp Ashraf and the ultimate safety of its residents is a prerequisite for achieving the ultimate goal, to see a free Iran. We know that the international community, all United Nations member states, have a duty, a responsibility to protect the people of Ashraf. We know that the United States government and my government has a specific moral and legal responsibility, since they were the ones who took the means for self-protection away from the people of Ashraf and made a written commitment to protect them until their problems were resolved. United Nations officials and United States officials, instead of mounting adequate pressure on Iraq for an independent and in-depth inquiry into those events in July 2009 and April 2011, were pressed by Iraq to sanction forceful relocation of its residents. And I use the word forceful intentionally, because we all know that the residents of Ashraf never wanted to leave their homes, the homes they built with their own hands and resources over a quarter of a century ago. To the contrary, many of them had left such life comforts to go to the deserts of Iraq, to fight for freedom and to build up the case for freedom for their fellow countrymen and women. No relocation from Ashraf is or was intended to be voluntarily done. Camp Liberty is a 21st century anachronism. Could be more properly called Camp Belsen, a concentration camp without the right to bring your own property, without the right to freedom of movement, without the right to see your lawyers and family, without basic health care, without proper water supply and sewage. We are here today to tell Mr. Kobler and Mr. Fried that we will not approve of pressurising any more of the residents to move from Camp Ashraf to the so-called Camp Liberty.